How do we represent fractions and equivalent decimal numbers? We can use 100 square grids to show decimal numbers and fractions. This grid shows the fraction 1/4 and the decimal number 25 hundredths. The shaded area is the parts we have. In the fraction 1/4, this is the numerator. In the decimal number 25 hundredths, this is the number we see. The total parts are a power of 10. In this case, we are using a 100 square grid, so there are 100 total parts. We can use a similar grid to show that 1/2 and 5/10 are equivalent. We see that 1/2 of the grid is shaded. We also see that 5 of the 10 columns are shaded, representing the 5/10. The 100 square grid also helps us see that 3/4 and 75 hundredths are equivalent. We see that 3/4 of the grid is shaded. It is more difficult to see what fractions like 3/8 look like on a 100 square grid because the denominator does not divide evenly into 100. We can use a circle to represent fractions like this. This circle is divided into 8 equal parts, and 3 are shaded. This circle represents the fraction 3/8. We can convert the fraction 3/8 into a decimal number by dividing the numerator by the denominator. The equivalent decimal number is 375 thousandths. This circle is called a decimal circle. The decimal circle is divided into 10 sections. There are 100 small marks on the outside of the circle. Each small mark represents 1/100th. We know that 375 thousandths is between 30 hundredths and 40 hundredths. It is halfway between 37 hundredths and 38 hundredths. Now we can shade in 375 thousandths on the decimal circle. We see that the shaded areas are the same, so 3/8 is equivalent to 375 thousandths. How do we represent fair shares on a decimal circle? Fraction circles are divided into fair shares. The denominator tells us how many fair shares should be in the circle. This circle shows 4 fair shares. This circle shows 5 fair shares. And this circle shows 6 fair shares. Decimal circles are also divided into fair shares. The fair shares are powers of 10. The first decimal place is tenths. They break the circle into 10 fair shares. The second decimal place is hundredths. They break the circle into 100 fair shares. The next decimal place is thousandths. They divide the circle into 1,000 fair shares. These fair shares are so small, they are difficult to see. We start with 1/10, then jump to 100th, and so on. This is because decimal numbers are powers of 10. There are limits to the fair shares we can show on a decimal circle.